Agile implementation. We've seen that the challenge in innovation is not simply having a great idea. We've got to create value from that idea, and that doesn't happen instantaneously. What we have to do is manage an innovation funnel. That's the lower picture here in this slide, moving from outline ideas through to finally launching something. And that's a process that involves reducing uncertainty. At the outset, we don't know very much at all about the project. We have to learn. And we learn by trying things out, by exploring the market, by taking the technology further, and so on. But this learning doesn't come cost-free. So the more we go through a project, the more deeply we're committed. And so one way of looking at the implementation challenge is thinking of it as one of managing uncertainty over the project life. Essentially, one tool to help us with all of this is project management. Of course, project management is all about managing the time, the money, the other resources that go into an innovation project. But we still have this challenge of uncertainty because we don't know what's going to happen on the journey, no matter how good our plan is. And let's remind ourselves, this problem of uncertainty is inherent in any plan. As Robert Burns, the Scottish poet, famously put it, the best laid plans of mice and men have a habit of going wrong. Unexpected things happen. Inside the organisation, internal changes, delays, breakdowns, battles. We don't know what those things will be, just that there's a good chance they'll happen. And this kind of uncertainty is mirrored in the outside world, where again, markets change, competitors change what they do, technology shifts, governments change legislation. So really, if we're going to manage a project, it isn't just about having a plan, it's also having a way of pausing along our implementation journey and reviewing, asking ourselves the key question, is this still the right thing to do? This leads us very quickly to the idea of stage gates. Simply, during that innovation funnel, whatever the stages are, inserting some gates, some review points where we ask some difficult questions. Is this still the right thing to do? Is the technology working? Is the market there? And so on and so forth. And only if we can successfully answer yes to those questions do we open the gates and allow more resources to flow. It may be we don't stop the project, but that is an option. We might need to adapt or change, to pivot it. So, there are some good tools, project management tools and stage gates to help us. And that's a very valuable start to our implementation thinking. But there's one other element which is worth thinking about here, and that's the need to try and build in agility, being able to develop the skills to learn and to pivot quickly. Now, agile approaches are essentially widely used in innovation now, and they're very simple. They break the major project down into a series of short learning cycles. They do those experiments and learn from them, including failing. Failure's okay. If we learn from something that doesn't work, that allows us to pivot, to adapt the project towards something that will. So fast failure, and certainly not repeating failure, but fast failure and learning is the key. And this is a typical picture of an agile approach. It's essentially about having ideas, trying them out, measuring, observing the results, and learning from that information. There may be different representations in terms of the circles, but it's essentially the same principles of a build, measure, and learn kind of cycle. So, agile approaches began life in the world of software development, and they were moving, not least because of dissatisfaction, from long planned development projects to breaking those big projects down into short bursts. And subsequently, after moving out of the software field, agile approaches have become widely used in mainstream product development, and they've had a particular impact in the startup space. There's an approach called the lean startup, which is essentially all about taking a lean approach and managing with scarce and limited resources the startup process with all of its high uncertainty. So, how does Agile actually get put into practice? Well, It starts by setting a clear stretch goal and then breaking that down into small sprints, small fast learning cycles. Designing those to explore what are essentially hypotheses at the outset, what we believe. We think people will value this, we think this technology will work. These are hypotheses. We have to test them. That's our investment in learning. In order to test them as early as possible, a very powerful concept in Agile is something called the minimum viable product. Basically something that's a very simple representation of what it is we're trying to put across so that we can test and prototype early and simply. It could simply be a paper sketch or a mock-up on the screen. The idea of a minimum viable product is essentially a very early prototype through which we can learn, and the learning allows us to pivot and move on to the next cycle. Now, one of the other key elements in Agile is the idea of dedicated project teams, often drawing on many different functions, and they're very often called a Scrum team, and they have a Scrum Master. The origins of this come from the world of rugby, but the Scrum Master essentially is a facilitator rather than a project leader, enabling these Scrum teams to meet regularly, often every day, planning what they're going to do during that day, and then reviewing before moving on to the next cycle. Now, does Agile work in project implementation? Well, the evidence is accumulating. In things like software projects, the savings can often be as much as 40% of time, and at the same time the quality is improved. And there's an increasing experience of Agile approaches in physical products which carries the same message. Services, the same kind of thing again. Certainly, the lean startup is a powerful methodology for startup entrepreneurs, and it does seem to help manage the very limited resources which startups have. But not every project is going to benefit from an Agile approach, certainly not with all its fast cycles. It may be there's a need for quality control and concern. It may be necessary to bring the client in. So basically, there's a need to adapt the philosophy to suit different particular circumstances. So let's summarize where we've been in this short film. The challenge of managing uncertainty through development projects means we have to do something. We can't simply press the button for go and hope. Project planning can help, and stage gates can help. So too can an Agile philosophy, essentially breaking the project down into sprints and then going through fast learning cycles. And key elements in the Agile approach are Scrum teams, Scrum Masters to lead those teams, fast prototyping, testing and pivoting. But Agile is a philosophy and needs configuring to different projects and to different circumstances.